What's Cinco de Mayo? Well, let's talk about what it's not. It's not Mexican Independence Day. And though cervezas and nachos are consumed from Canada to Texas, it's not really celebrated that much in Mexico. To sort out much of the relevance of Cinco de Mayo, it helps to talk history. U.S. Civil War history, to be exact. The southern states had just seceded in hopes of forming a new country. They had a new Confederate Constitution which read a lot like the U.S. Constitution, save for one major difference. The Southern version named and protected both white supremacy and slavery. So, the Confederates fire on Fort Sumter to kick off the Civil War. A few months later, they beat the North in the first battle and pretty much every other battle after that for about a year. And in the North, real concern set in. Could the North win the war at all? Would slavery be abolished, or would white supremacy rule the day? At the same time, California was populated in no small part by Latinos, who a few years earlier had gone to sleep Mexican nationals and woken up Americans, once California, previously a land of Mexico, was made a free state of the American Union. By this time, Mexico had already abolished slavery in their constitution, and many of these Latino Californians, having recently been Mexican citizens, rejected the notion of white supremacy and slavery anywhere. Okay, now, at the same time, Napoleon III of France, dead set on taking Mexico City, sent his French troops into Mexico to take down President Juarez. In the minds of many Mexicans, among other things, the Civil War, at least ideologically, was spreading southward. We had freedom and inclusion on one hand versus slavery and exclusion on the other. To make matters worse, Napoleon, who had grown pretty cozy with the Confederates, was hinting he might just help them out in their fight against Lincoln's North. He had eyes on installing a French monarchy there. Really, all the South needed was for one country to recognize them as a sovereign state, for them to be legitimized in their eyes. So things were looking really bad for the North and for freedom at large. But before the French troops could get to Mexico City and depose President Juarez, they had to march through a little town called Puebla. And on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, they were stopped. Now, it took about 3 weeks for the news to make it to California and other states and their plethora of Spanish-language newspapers, but once it did, people took to the streets in celebration. In Mexico, the Battle of Puebla was a relatively minor conflict. To this day, it barely registers in Mexican history books. But in the U.S., after a year of losses, there was a different reaction. Even though it was Mexico, the troops of democracy and freedom beat the army of slavery and tyranny. The rest is history. So this Cinco de Mayo, let's all join together and celebrate the Battle of Puebla.